Are you ready? Ready to bring a revolution to your relationships? Ready for the experiences on your dating adventure to evolve? Ready for more passion, intimacy, connection, and love in your relationship? Ready to heal past relationship wounds? You're in the right place. I'm Alan, the love engineer, and this is the Relationship Revolutions podcast. In this series, you'll get guidance and tips from me, interviews from other relationship experts, insights from couples who already have a great relationship, and other mind-opening conversations. Hey, and welcome to today's episode of Relationship Revolutions. Today, I am joined by a man who describes himself as a tattooed brummie with a beard. And that pretty much sums him up. Though there's a lot more to him than just his looks. He is a coach, he's a stand-up comedian, and he's an ex-podiatrist. And in this conversation with Dave, I actually found out quite a few useful things. And also, did you know that stand-up comics can also be funny when they're sitting down? And now to my conversation with the one and only Dave James.
Yeah, click record before we get too deep. That's why that's relationship advice for you straight away, isn't it?
It is indeed. Just imagine every date having to record it just to cover your own rear end.
And you know,
thing is, it's going that way.
Well, I was going to say, and in joking, joking aside, yeah. Yeah. You may have also provided me with something which I can use for my stand-up, so I'm going to make a quick note of that, actually. That could be quite useful.
Yeah, I've said something on a recent podcast that you could use, I don't know. But in the current dating climate where you've got a profile, the pictures have been either done by AI, they're photoshopped, they're filtered, and then the actual text on the profile is written by ChatGPT. You get two people that like that. They communicate with going through ChatGPT before sending every message, and then they get in the same room. Who the hell are you, and why is your communication style suddenly fell off the planet?
Well, this is one of the things. That's one of the lines I do have in my stand-up is as I go through the recent stuff I've been doing. I go through and I talk about dating and talk about how dating is so different now in the future. Back then it was you meet someone, cool, and then things happen. Now it's all swipey on apps. And one of the lines I talk about is a little skit is I talk about the fact that you have to lie about everything. To lie about your age, your height, your hair color, or absence of hair. You have to lie about your name. You have to lie about what you like and enjoy. And then I say that my dating profile, I think it was my Tinder profile I used, which is ironic because I've never used Tinder, but I use it as part of the sketch. Is my Tinder profile says that I am I think it's an obese dwarf called Kirsty, and then I go into the fact that actually it's probably my Dungeons and Dragons profile. But it's a real thing, isn't it? That there'll be people in the audience going, yeah, actually, I have actually lied about certain things. I even had a mate who was dating on one of the other apps, and he met with this lovely lady who was put down 40 out on a profile. And the first thing she said to him is when they met, he said, just to let you know that actually that's not true. I'm actually 53, but I prefer to connect with younger people and I feel young at heart. And his first thought was, well, hang on, if you're lying about that, that's a small thing relatively. What else might go on later on? And it's a really serious thing about honesty, authenticity, and connection.
Absolutely. Years ago, when I think it was after my divorce, there was one lady I was chatting to, and she describes herself as a little extra padding. And I could cope with that, as most men can. I kid you not. I gave her a hug and my hands would not meet each other. It's like, okay. Now, as your mate said, well, if she's not been fully truthful with that, what else? And one of the keys to making a relationship work is trust. And that's just gone out the window.
I suppose, though, what I would say to that, the bit about extra padding is that there's different ways of viewing that, because that becomes a perspective thing. I mean, age, even then there's a perspective thing, but age is a number, isn't it? It's like, you count the years in the same way you count the rings. If we chopped you in half and you look like a tree, the bit of extra padding bit, because I am by no means overweight, but I would say that I am heavier than I'd like to be, and I would describe myself that way. So I think it's really interesting, isn't it, on perception? What if I say to you, we're coming on a podcast, and by the way, I have a little bit of extra padding. It's what goes on in your mind based on your experience and your bias.
Yeah, definitely.
Fascinating, isn't it?
It is. It's like, remember my master coach trainer, when he was talking about relationships and stuff, one of the things he said is the dating process and relationship stuff. Now, we put out this persona that there's no flies on me, love, and you start building this this connection or relationship, and then it decides to get a bit more serious, and then you get married, and just before you walk down the aisle, like, hang on a minute, let me just get my bag of crap, and off you go. And then all this crap comes out in the relationship farther down the line. What if we were to say, actually, before we get too serious, this is some of the crap that I'm dealing with. Are you willing to help me unpack it and get rid of some of it? Would that be a positive thing, or would that put people off? I don't know. A lot of it depends what's in that case.
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? It's what's in the case, but also where is that person in their life? I am in a much better space now to be able to be with someone who has a history, but is also upfront and honest about it. And I'm upfront and honest about my history. I talk about the things which have gone off me, the things which I'm still working through now, which are reasonably significant at times. I think it's a really interesting one. How much do you talk about at the beginning? And when is the right time to do it? And I don't know, I have the right answer. I'm not a relationship coach. No, and I'm not a relationship coach, which is probably very obvious based on many of my relationships in the past, including the one to myself. So yeah, you probably don't want to be taking dating advice ever from me.
So let's get some background information on this persona I see on the screen next to me, the bearded Robbie with tattoos, as you describe yourself.
The man who is heavily God blimey, what do you want to know? How far back do you want to
go? Well, from what I understand from your talk I heard recently at Circle Networks, you had a previous marriage which, as it doesn't exist anymore, didn't go the way you were anticipating. So what's life like now compared to back then and the days of your foot fetish?
So what I will say about marriage is I am still married. We haven't got divorced. That is something which is on the cards.
Okay.
We just never got around to it. But been separated 3 years, and probably the thing which led into that, and what for me is probably a big part of how I ended up here. So I'm crossing my legs to get comfortable now. I feel like I'm in for the long haul. So I'll go back a few years. I'll go back to when I was a teenager. So when I was at school, there was a friend at school who was abducted and murdered back in 1988. And I'm saying that very much from a headspace place, because if I take it to the heart of the body at the moment, you'll have me having tissues and I won't be coming out for a while. But that was a big change for me, because as a teenager, as a 14-year-old, it was how do you express yourself to the world? And the way I expressed myself to the world was via anger. And that traveled right the way through my adult life. And it followed me through various relationships, which started and failed. Some relationships which went on a bit longer. Some relationships which were, totally non-starters. But also things like university and first jobs. And it certainly set me on the path to probably not have a linear path through life. It was always going to be something quite interesting. And then I met my wife, my ex, when we both worked in A&E. And it was great. And we had 3 children together. We got married. We got married between child 1 and child 2. When I was a podiatry student, well, and when we'd both been A&E nurses. And then with 3 children coming along, the children were probably some of the things which threw me. They were the things which really challenged me, because kids take you back to basics. Kids have this ability to get right into your heart without even getting to know you first. It's not like how you doing? What do you like? Oh, do you like cheese? Or how do you feel about Christmas? None of that stuff. It's just straight in.
Yeah.
And it really destabilized me, really, really threw me. And I'd probably, looking back on it now, go back and say I probably had some element of postnatal depression. I can look at that now and go, probably that was the case. Back then, there would have been no way that I had the emotional intelligence to entertain the fact that as a bloke, is it possible for me to have postnatal depression?
Yeah.
Having spoken to some people now, it's like, well, absolutely. So the anger kind of did this, it intensified and it up and down, and it was you very much use your pattern for me. And I used to go through patterns of huge amounts of anger, reacting to very, very little in relative terms, break things, and then I'd withdraw and dissociate for a while because I was so scared of it happening again. And I was very upfront and honest with my ex about that. But I think even then, if you say it, until you actually see it, it's a very different thing.
Yeah.
And this kind of continued. There were very bits of therapy back in sort of 2006, 2007, CBT. But in 2015, my wife threw me out. She literally just had enough of my behavior and was like, right, get out the door. Now I didn't get out the door. I was very stubborn because I thought we could sort it out. And in the end, I had to go. And I was out for a couple of weeks. That was the catalyst for me to go, right, I've got to sort this out. I cannot let my anger rule me in the way that it did. And that was my, cheesy coach term alert, my personal journey, which came up. Oh, I see, I've done that now. I always do this on the videos. I don't know what Zoom does. And then Zoom freezes the screen. So for those of you who are watching, not with just an audio only source, you've just seen my screen freeze. But I went on that journey and I started to really look at what was my trigger, what was really making me behave in a particular way, and really found a way of helping to manage that, helping to have a much better relationship with me. The challenge was with that it ultimately didn't save my marriage, and that's okay. I look on that now, and I can see that actually it was the way it went was exactly the way it was meant to go, exactly the right way for both of us at that time. What's really interesting for me is, had that happened pre-2015, it would have been a real mess for me. But the person I had become on that journey was very, very different, and so could handle what was going on. And all that change, all that personal development sat at the same time as I went from running my own podiatry business. In fact, I'd left the NHS in 2015, beginning of 2015, had a bit of a burnouty breakdown during 2015, and then was thrown out of the house. And then by 2018, I decided that actually, after being coached, I didn't want to be working as a clinical podiatrist anymore. So that hence the foot fetish. It was a professional foot fetish, though, so it was okay. People paid me for it, and I had a certificate and everything. And I decided I wanted to coach people instead. And that kind of led me down that route of being where I am now. 5 years down the line from selling my business, working with individuals, speaking about all kinds of stuff, including well-being and a little bit of entrepreneurship and a bit of marketing and a bit of business and all kind of odd things, lots of variety, which I always tend to go for, and also then the stand-up comedy on top of it. So yeah, going back, there's been lots of things which I can trace back to that thread of anger which led through everything, and then that realization I had to do something to not let that control me.
Yeah, it's amazing how sometimes we need to get taken to that brink to make a decision to do something different, especially as men. My friend Joe Horton on his podcast regularly talks about men being in a free fall. I think someone might say, oh, you should pull the cord. No, I've got this. And then a meter from the floor, oh shit.
Yeah.
By which time it's too late.
Yeah.
And at least, to be fair, you had a warning from her. I came home to an empty house.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is, the warnings were probably there. And I, I
Yeah.
absolutely applaud my ex for what she did. And I've said this to her, that actually turning around and having that decision, and making that decision and that choice to say, I'm not doing this anymore, get out, is huge. Absolutely
Yeah,
huge. It's a
definitely.
proper pattern interrupt. But the signs were there all along. The sign, yeah, there were
Yeah.
but I just hadn't read them. And actually there was elements in the way that I suppose we both behaved, which were giving it space for that behavior to be okay, and not condoning it, but there was space for me to kind of lose my cool, lose my temper, break some things, and then go and withdraw. It became a pattern which was accepted, a pattern which became the de facto standard. I think everyone shifted their behavior to accommodate that, which is, it doesn't feel good to think of it that way, but actually I can't blame anyone for doing that, including me. So yeah, the signs were there, but when you, I'll keep going with cheesy phrases. I'm in cheesy Monday mood at the moment. It's, when you hear the call, you answer it. When it's the right, when the student's ready, the master appears. All of these kind of things.
Yeah.
When it is the right time, it is the right time, and it is not the right time before then. It's not the right time afterwards. It is in that moment. That's that sliding door moment. And I can very acutely remember how I felt being in a hotel room that night, going, this is it. I've lost everything, and I've lost everything.
How did you feel?
From me being basically behaving in that way and being angry, and yet it's the internal stuff. And this is I think this is a human thing. I don't think it's just men, although men seem to do this very well. There's a very big difference between that outer persona and the inner persona. And for me, the outer persona was like, hey, everything's good, I'm fine, I can weather any storm, la la la. And inside I'm going, no, no, no. This is not good. I'm falling apart. But I think as a bloke, and certainly a lot of blokes I talk to, being able to articulate that openly, being able to talk about where you are, is not something we're used to doing. It's not something which is, it's encouraged. I mean, I've got books on here about masculinity and how talking about stuff's really cool, and it's encouraged to talk about your problems. It's a bit like saying be yourself. It's a very simple concept, but it's very hard to execute because we're going back and we're unraveling all these things in the past. But the signs were there. The signs were there. I can see them and I can read them a lot better. And hopefully I act upon those signs a bit better now, although I probably don't at times. I still make mistakes,
Yeah, I think social conditioning has a lot to do with these kind of things, because from an early age, we hear things like, oh, boys don't cry, don't show emotion, man up, and all those kind of things. So as we bring that with us into adulthood, and we hide our emotions, we don't cry, we don't do any of that stuff. Someone says, how you doing? I'm okay. I'm okay. Even though you're falling apart inside. And then we moan and get frustrated with our partners when they say, I'm fine, and they're clearly not.
Yeah.
And I think there's also a lot of social conditioning around men, especially in marriages, that effectively says the man goes down with the ship. It just happens to be a relationship. So if you can't leave, we stay in an unhealthy place for too long. And we're also too stubborn to ask for help.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's fascinating, having been in a marriage and never thinking that I would ever be in a position where I wasn't going to be married to that person. That was a big wake up call. And I very naively didn't know the statistics. 50% of marriages end, or 50% of marriages fall apart or fail, whatever language you want to use. Never thought that kind of I'd be part of that thing. So there's that element to it. I think the other thing which for me is really interesting is, we do tend to talk a bit in a dichotomy of male and female, man and woman when it comes to these things, but there's so many other different things to it. And the role of men is very different now. I mean, Richard Reeves' work, I absolutely love, reading his stuff where he talks about it's of men and boys. His book is fantastic because it shows you that disparity and inequity between sexes and genders. And I realize I'm kind of mixing sexes and genders. And anyone who listens to this who is an expert in that will, come and tell me off, and I'm happy to be told off about that. Just while my brain's in it at the moment, it's that the role of men has changed so much over the last 20, 30 years that men are still going, actually, what's going on here? And the inequity is very much pointed out, tends to be the inequity towards females, which is not wrong, because actually that needs to be addressed, but we're forgetting the inequity in the other direction. And then you add on top of that the numerous genders which we have and people identify as, that, simply asking a question of who are you in the context of sex, or who are you in the context of gender, becomes much, much harder and much more complex. And I think it's a really interesting world to step into, but it's also very confusing. And so, how do you act? How do you behave? What do you think? What does society think you should be doing? What are the laws and the regulations suggest that we should? My brain just explodes with this stuff. I'm just like, I don't know. And then I shut down like an android. I'm just like, and I just stop functioning for a while.
Yeah, brain does not compute.
Yeah. And I absolutely welcome it. I think it's a great opportunity for people to learn stuff. I mean, I've learned so much about relationships, even in the last few months, than I ever have done before, because I've been actually open and having the conversations. But I think there are still a lot of people who don't. Again, particularly blokes.
Definitely. Yeah. Yes. The relationship I'm in now is totally different from everything else I've had previously. And for the first time, I can actually, apart from feeling safe to be myself, but also to be able to show emotion and not get criticized, not get judged, just be accepted that, hey, he's feeling whatever he's feeling. And that's the one of the things that's completely caught me off guard. A few weeks ago, my dad got taken into hospital. So when we went there, and you know what some of the doctors are like, they know he's on his last legs. They know he's not going to last much longer. We know it. But they can't tell you that he's about to die. They'll skate around the fact and say, I think this might be his last visit here. It's like, what the fuck does that mean? And the way he spoke, it's kind of brought it home and real that actually he might not be here next week. He might not be here tomorrow. And I just lost it in that moment, in a way that I've not done for years. No matter what else has gone in my life, that really caught me off guard. And she just like sat there, Mika, bawling on her shoulder, and it's like, it's all good. Like, what the fuck is going on here? It's like, I don't know what's confusing me most, what the doctor's just been saying, or the fact I can cry on my partner's shoulder and it's okay. It's a completely different dynamic.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry to hear about that, mate.
It's, in a way, it's for the best, because he's no longer suffering. So he's now at peace. So we can all kind of get on with life, whatever life is.
Yeah. It's a big change, isn't it? It's a big change.
Is.
I think that ability you talked about there to be yourself, and it's a lot of what I talk about, is about being yourself, and it's not easy. It's not easy, and being yourself to me is a number of things. It's knowing who you are, it's knowing what your values are. It's then having the courage and the bravery to live each day through your values. That's only part of the story. The other part of the story is being around people who are accepting of your values and your view on the world, and accepting of the fact that that's who you are, and those are the things you say, and giving you the space to live in that way. And I mean, my experience is, if you said to me, in my marriage, was I me, I'd go, yeah, absolutely. Until now, and I'd go, I was kind of me. there were elements of me, but there was very much a lot of it which wasn't me. And it feels really sad to look at that now and say that and go, oh, okay. Because then, you know, my ex didn't necessarily get the best of me because I wasn't being me, but she got the version of me that was right to show up in that time based on those biases, based on my history, based on our experience. That was exactly the right person to show up. But I look back now and go, that's not who I am at all. And that's really hard. So the environment that you're in, the relationships you're in have to be able to provide that space in order for you to do that. And that's something which you learn over many years, or you start to educate people on it quite early, which is what we don't see in society. You know, society is very much based on, I'm not an expert on schools. I just think of Sir Ken Robinson when he was alive and his TED talk on why education kills creativity. But the idea that we do academic subjects and we tick those boxes to be clever, but actually what we don't do is we don't talk about relationships and communication, and we don't talk about emotional intelligence, and we don't talk about compassion, and we don't talk about having that space for other people to be themselves, and judgment and non-judgment. It's all of this stuff which you learn later on by the shit hitting the fan. And then you go, what the fuck was that? Okay, now I've got to pick up the pieces of my life and try and put them together into something else.
Yeah, I think who we put out to the world is a little bit like a theatre performance where sometimes the best bits are backstage. Sometimes it's because they need a rest, because they've been out there for hours or days. But other times it's because actually, in the past, when we put those parts of us out, we got punished for it. For some, it might be that comedian, the joker within, that comes out at the wrong moment. Not sure. Don't know that you'd relate to that one, but
not at all.
Other times it's a serious one when everyone's being too serious and everything's going crazy at that time. We all have these different parts to play, but sometimes it's triggered by the audience. Sometimes that comedian gets booed off stage. Sometimes the one that's trying to lead the show gets booed off for being boring. And that part of you gets booed off or whatever, they don't want to come back out on stage again. We hide away. And then just the safe, non-confrontational versions of us go out on stage. And then we want somebody to see the real us, whatever that is. So who is Dave?
Who is Dave? Blimey, that's a good one. So just talk to what you said there, which is, I think it's really important. When I talk to people about being yourself and authenticity, I'm not saying for a moment we shouldn't wear masks, because I think we do have to play different roles and wear different masks in order to survive. Because there are certain times when you can truly be yourself, and there are other times where you have to wear clothes and Asda. It's as simple as that. You can't do everything you want. I think what I see is the use of language, which is quite hard. So I'll give you an example. We went to stand up last night, did a gong show, put a video out about this early today, the day we're filming this, and it was good. I got to 3.5 minutes, and then was kind of red carded off, which is fine. And I felt a little bit of disappointment from that. But I know that. But I didn't go up there and be anything other than me. Now, I wasn't exactly the best version of me for various reasons, tired and brain and all this sort of stuff, and a new venue and all this kind of stuff. But there was two things which really stood out for me. One was the fact that the host, very experienced host, actually said quite early on, he said, it's a very respectful crowd. So if you've got any kind of, big language like C words or anything like that, you might want to do it later in the day later in the set when people have had a few beers and they're a bit more relaxed. And I was like, okay, fine. So I ended up going last because I do have a championship level C word in mind. But what was really interesting is how, and I spoke to a few other people who come along with me, is how they felt on edge because of that. It was like, basically, you're telling us we've got to kind of change who we are in our set to suit the audience. And it's like, that automatically puts you on edge. So that was one thing which was really interesting. And in the end, championship level C word got dumped. Life was good. Even though they didn't like it. Too respectful, obviously. But what was really interesting as well is the first guy to go on in the middle section. Never done stand-up before. Lovely guy called David. He just said, I want to do this. I've written some stuff. I want to go ahead and do it. I'm going to do it. And we were chatting beforehand, and I said, well, you just go up there and you just do it. You just literally talk about things which are important to you. You don't know what it's going to be like until you are up there. You've got no idea what it's like until you're on stage and you're actually doing it. And he was really worried about forgetting his lines. And I said, to be honest, no one else out in the audience knows what you're going to say. So if there's something you don't say, they'll think it's normal. They'll think it's absolutely fine. But it was really interesting in terms of looking at how people were adapting to the audience they were in. I mean, you take it out of the comedy context, the comedy club with the airline style seating. Well, how does that look in business, and how does that look in networking groups? And we're in the same networking group, and I think actually in the networking group we're in, it's actually pretty cool. There's not that limitation.
It is.
How does it look? We're not going to give a shout out to it because he doesn't deserve that this week. Not yet. He hasn't worked hard enough for it. How does this show up in businesses and companies? How much of a mask do you have to put on in order to survive in that, and how much does it help you? And I do think that there's a very clear correlation between authenticity, and the word gets thrown around far too much, but it's a good word, between authenticity and energy usage, and probably stress and burnout. There's a definite correlation in all of that, and it shows up in the research, particularly around healthcare. And I went off on a tangent then, but I'm back now. And you asked me a question. You said about the real Dave, didn't you?
Yeah. Who is Dave?
Oh, so I would come back to my values on that. I would come back to my values, and my values very, very clearly. I love learning, freedom, and fun. Though the values which took me a few years to identify them, and probably I can play around with them. Love can become compassion, freedom can become choice, or it can become maverick. There's various different ones on there. But when I look at all of those four, I can see where I've made decisions. I can see where I've changed jobs or left careers, or I've said something or I've thought something based on those four values. Fun is probably the biggest one for me, which fits in with a comedy. But if I'm not going to have fun with something, then I'm probably not going to do it. Or if I do it, I'm not going to do it well. Freedom for me, freedom is variety. I get the opportunity. The weekend I was down at a show in London. That was fantastic. This week I'm speaking. I stand up last night, and then I've got 3 other events I'm doing, 1 virtual, 2 in person, all over the place. I get freedom from that, and I love that, and love is a big one for me, because I can't love everyone really. I think everyone is really cool. I think everyone is worthy of love. And then learning as a word is not about me learning stuff particularly. It's about me learning. It's about you learning. It's about teaching. It's about community. It's about collaboration. And if I had to take you back to the question, who am I? I am all of those things. And I am me when I am expressing all of those things in some way, shape, or form. And I'm allowed to express those, or I choose to express those.
Yeah.
That's where I'd go back to.
Love it. So with the being authentic thing, as you say, I think sometimes to try and be our most authentic selves all of the time is going to be as exhausting as trying to hide our authentic selves. I think a lot of it is about being the most authentic version of yourself that you can in the moment.
Yeah. Totally agree with that. And the benefit of being my own boss is that I can be as authentic as I want to be when I choose to be. If you're working for a big corporate organization where there is a requirement to wear a suit from Burton's in a particular color, and probably a shirt in a very similar color, and shoes in a very similar style, and it's how do you bring your personality and authenticity into that? I mean, for me, if I was working in a corporate environment, well, I probably wouldn't be now. They'd probably have sacked me by now. But what would I be doing to bring my personality through? So I absolutely love Star Trek. I love Star Trek. I would probably have a suit that where you open the side of it, inside, it would be the face of Sir Patrick Stewart done repeatedly. And that would be my thing, or it would be whenever on my bag downstairs, I've got a badge which is a Star Trek badge with the with kind of the rainbow flag style on it. So it's finding ways of expressing yourself in small ways, which remind you of who you are, which remind you of what you're connected to. And for me, that comes back to meaning and purpose. There has to be a thread of meaning and purpose through everything you do. And I see too many people who don't have meaning and purpose in what they do. It's knowing that even though you have to be a type of person in a particular way or a particular time, that there is still a thread of you in there somewhere. And I mean, I think about my A&E days. There's no way I could go into A&E and not put on scrubs like everyone else, and not turn up for work at different times. You just say, I want to do it whenever I want to do it, or go and have excessive amounts of fun at other people's expense. No, there's a path you have to tread in order to do that job in a particular way. But you make sure that you bring in other elements of who you are to sit in there. It's almost like having a desk in an office and getting a little ornament which is you and just putting it on there. It's that reminder and that connection to who you are at your core.
Funny you say that. I actually have an ornament on my desk.
Why doesn't that surprise me?
Which is one of them.
Yay!
It's what the kids gave me this year. They chose themselves when we were on holiday in Butlins. They didn't show me what it was, but I think my partner might have had a influence, or certainly helped hide it and things like that. But I suppose just for anyone who might be listening on audio, I think I should give some kind of description of what the ornament is.
Yes. It's 8 inches long, and it's flashing and moving of its own accord. What is that?
And I thought you were a stand-up comedian. You only told jokes standing up.
No, I can do that too. See, there we go. You see, if you were in a wheelchair, would you be a stand-up comedian? That's the question, isn't it?
It is indeed. And I'll let you answer that one in a minute. No, what it actually is a piece of wood that says the best dad in the world belongs to us. And who am I to argue with them?
Exactly. And it's interesting. You've got me looking around my desk now. I mean, my desk is to give a phrase. It's a bit of a shit tip, but that's fine. This is because I've been out and about, so I haven't done much. But what I do have is, and it's very dirty, is I have a coaster. So this is a Moomin coaster. I never really got on with the Moomins when I was a kid. It's a dirty Moomin coaster, and it is basically 2 Moomins sat in a tree or sat by a tree drinking wine. And the one Moomin on the left is saying, "It isn't easy life. I mean, perhaps it isn't, but it's full of variety, which is all good." And I got that. Well, actually, I didn't. Me and my daughter, we were in London last year, and we were coming back after 3 days. She was doing some stuff for a play. She was doing She was doing a stage management element for it at the Edinburgh Fringe. And we went to the Moomin store, and the Moomin store is really cool. And there's only one Moomin store I know of, and that's Covent Garden. And I got her a coaster, and she got me a coaster. So it's a reminder of my little girl, who's not so little anymore, and she's an adult, but she's still going to be my little girl. It's those little things which are there, which remind me. It's the blimey. It's all the things hanging on the back of the door there. That's a reminder of the speaking I've done over the last couple of years. There are lanyards from that. There's plants. There's stickers I've got up the corner on board. There's all kinds of little things which are in here for me. Now, if I was working in a big corporate office, I probably wouldn't be able to have that. But there would be something. Backdrop to my phone, or maybe the music I'm listening to while I'm working, or any of those things. There's always something you can connect yourself back to, and I see too many people who I think forget that sometimes, just how powerful that is.
So, on a slight tangent from there, back to the comedy. I've seen a meme all over social media several times that says something along the lines of, you've got to watch these funny guys because one moment they're talking to you and the next minute your knickers are on the floor. Is there any truth to that?
Well, there doesn't need to be any underwear on the floor in here at the moment. I don't know. I think it's a really interesting question. And I said this to someone the other day, that I've always been an entertainer in some respects for as long as I can remember, and I know that comes back to Dad's very much into comedy. My mum was born in Dudley, which I think is, for her, she needed a sense of humour to come out of that. I've always been around comedy, so for me, it's very, very natural. And I always see the funny side of things. And working as an A&E nurse quite early on in my career, you needed to have a sense of humour, but otherwise you just break. You needed to see the dark, the humour and the dark humour and everything. And I think as well at school, I was never the one to kind of fit into various cliques. I had a small group of friends, but they were up and down anyway, and they deaf you out on various times depending on the direction of the wind on a Thursday. So I was always very good at being around other groups of people and being the entertainer. And I'm saying to someone recently that, well, this face is not designed to attract any attention from my chosen sex that I'm attracted to or gender that I'm attracted to. But the one thing which I could always do was have a conversation with someone and make them laugh. So I think there is an element of what is it that people go for in relationships? Because, looks change, looks fade, physical stuff disappears. For me, the sweet spot's the connection which goes deeper than that.
Yeah.
It's a connection on other levels, and to be with somebody who you're connected to spiritually, emotionally, physically, psychologically, energetically, all of those things is so important. And I think that, yes, we can have that physical attraction. We're essentially just animals with a slightly bigger brain who can look over fences. That's what we are at our core. But when you start adding all those other layers into that physical kind of attraction, oh my God, it's just like it wakes things up. And I think about, I was chatting with someone recently about love languages. So I've done the love language quiz. I've always been in the love languages. I've always been very much touch. You see me, you're going to get a hug. I'll normally ask for permission and consent. There was a while where I didn't do that. I got caught out on that, and that's wholly on me. But touch has always been a huge, huge thing for me, that physical kind of connection. And I now look at it and realize that it's not just about physical touch. It's about touch on all different levels. But it's actually shifted to be my second highest. Now my highest is quality time. And that's been a really big shift for me to realize that it's like, oh, this is new. And then I've gone, no, it isn't. It's probably always been there. That quality time element. But what's really interesting is when I was discussing it came out that actually comedy is a love language as well. And it's not just limited to the 5. You've comedy is a huge love language that, I geek out on comedy. I find comedy really attractive. I find someone who's got a really good sense of humor and is very quick on those things to be very attractive. So I can see totally why some people would be like, oh my God, you're so funny. All my clothes have fallen off. I can see that being a thing. It's never happened to me, but I can see it being a thing.
Yeah. Now, I heard somewhere this does kind of resonate for me a little bit, is that when men put good sense of humor as being important on their dating profile, it means they want someone who will laugh at their jokes. And when women put that on their profile, they mean they want someone that can make them laugh.
I think probably on a base level, I think you're right. But I think what's really interesting in this is the power dynamic between sexes. And of course, talking broadly about male female here, and again acknowledging that there are many different genders to come in.
Other genders are available.
Other genders are available. As I said at a student night the other night, I said, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, or gender pronouns of your choice. It's acknowledging all of that, and it's not as limited to that dichotomy male or female. But as a bloke, where do the potential threats come from? You know, if you look at a society which is, you know, man goes out to work, he is the provider, all of those things. Woman is the nurturer, is the carer, the looker afterer. That's not even a word, but you know, maybe staying home mum, whatever that looks like. And I think quite a lot of society, that balance still exists. Man is the funny one, the man is the loud one, the alpha, the outspoken one, the female maybe not so much. What if that flips around? You know, how, and it does, and it rightly should, but how do people feel about that? And I can see that there'd be quite a lot of blokes going, well, actually, I think I'm really funny, but my female partner is funnier than me. And actually that makes me feel a little bit kind of emasculated or insecure. And it becomes a very interesting dynamic to play with. It's the awareness of that, but it's the awareness of that in the context of what society normally would say about things like that. So I think that back to your point of, you know, good sense of humor on a female profile is looking for someone who can make them laugh, but yeah, good sense of humor on a male profile is someone who'll listen to them laugh. I love nothing more than somebody being able to make me laugh. I absolutely love it. I love just to be in that place where something so funny has happened, and you know, I'm with a partner who can just witness that and just literally just collapse. It's just so funny. But the hierarchy of power and sex and gender, which does exist in some ways, which we've definitely got to work on. It's interesting, really interesting stuff.
I bet you still laugh every time you look at your coffee cup.
Well, my coffee cup is a BFG one, but I laugh at so many things. I think I've got a friend Beth, who's an Emmy award-winning comedy writer. She is brilliant. She basically says truth is funny. Truth is funny. I can look out my window here. There's some spaces which are used to go to the local supermarket. It's like an hour parking. I could do a whole routine based on the parking habits of the people of North Worcestershire, because it's funny how people behave. It's everywhere. Can laugh at absolutely everything. You know, when we first wanted to Zoom a few years ago, when people started doing that, you know, the things that people would say on Zoom, the stuff which happened in the background, just so much stuff just to laugh at in real life.
Yeah, the number of people who got the camera going and there's kind of the bathroom in the background and they haven't necessarily realised, and somebody else hasn't realised that the camera's going and don't close the door and all kinds of stuff. That it was crazy.
Yeah, and the even down to the things like people selling I'm selling a television, a flat screen TV on Facebook Marketplace, and they've taken a picture of the TV, not realizing that a TV screen reflects, and there they are, basically naked from the waist down. It's just so funny what people do. The challenge is, though, that actually funny is great. It's when an incident like that, and I'm going to obviously pick on the one of someone naked from the waist down, it's when that's picked up on and it's used in a different way. It's used as a weapon against someone, or it's used to make someone feel any less human or degrade them. That's when it's not good.
Yeah. So the intent behind it.
Absolutely. And I don't think we're while I think this is where the communication bit comes into it, that yes, intent is very important. If I don't intend to hurt anyone, then cool. It's acknowledging that even though I don't have the intent to hurt someone, I have done, and then how do you work that out? And actually, again, it comes down to communication and conversation. It comes down to compassion. It comes down to understanding what people have been through in their life, and actually thinking outside of this very narrow kind of box that I live in because I have a face which looks like this.
I think it was Ricky Gervais when he was talking about people being offended by jokes, and he just says, well, you found it offensive, I found it funny. You be offended, that's your choice. I find it funny, and that's why I'm happier than you are.
it's. I see. I think that. I think offence is a really interesting one. I think, like anything, it's not a straight line. It's an intertwining of things based on context. It reminded me when you said that about the way I use language now is that, you know, technically no one can piss me off. I can become pissed off, or I can choose to be pissed off, or if somebody does something internally, for me, there'll be something which goes on which says that I'm annoyed by that, but actually it's I'm reacting to it in a way which is annoyed. Someone, you know, if someone's driving up and down the street here with a car which makes a huge amount of noise, yeah, I'd probably say that would piss me off. But actually, they're just doing their thing. They're just getting on with life and making a ton of noise. How I react to it and how I respond is the important thing. That's some of the work I did years ago, was how do I react to something which I would say that made me angry. But flipping the language to I am angry at that, then opens up that conversation to I'm angry at that because, oh, okay, because I feel this way and I noticed that. Cool. Why is that? Well, and you unravel it and track it back as far as you want to go. And it comes down to the offence bit, is not you've offended me, but I am offended by that.
Yeah.
That's a very different conversation, which is like, okay, thanks for telling me that offends you. And I love Ricky Gervais's approach to it, which is, you know, basically, what's your point? But at the same time, it's acknowledging that actually there are times when we might cause harm, and maybe just kind of easing back a little bit just helps with that. It's individual, it's contextual, and for me, it's important to get down to communication on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you hit on something very, very important there. And that is that nobody can actually make you feel anything without something going on within you that says, you are now, or I am now angry, I am frustrated, I'm sad, I am happy.
Yeah, and it's interesting that while no one can ever make you feel anything, there are things that people can do which will put a lot of pressure on you and can lead you in a particular direction where you may end up at that point. But it's realizing. I think it's that, for me, it's that realization of, I'm feeling this. Ooh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
What does that mean for me? What's really going on for me in all of that? I think, yeah, it is really interesting. I mean, if people are doing things deliberately to annoy someone else, then yeah, probably should have a word about that. Really, that's kind of taking it a bit far. But it's doing that from a place of response, not reaction.
Yeah, definitely. As I've seen so many people on the dating profiles say, I just want someone to make me happy. Well, can you do that with yourself? Can you look in the mirror?
Happiness is an inside game.
What brings happiness to you?
Yeah.
Because the moment we start looking at our partners saying, it's your job to make me happy, we put an immense amount of pressure on them. We need to take responsibility for that for ourselves, really.
Yeah, happiness is an inside game. And you know, going back to that, I mean, going back to just I had a thought on the thing about, you know, other people pissing you off, is that a lot of it we talk about the thought element of this. You know, happiness is an inside game. It's essentially thought created. If we choose to be happy, we're happy. If we choose not to be happy, we're not happy. That's all well and good until you are somebody who is in a position where they haven't got enough money to heat, to put the electricity on, to have lights, to have food. They're not there going, oh, you know, happiness is an inside game. It's like, actually, for them, there's an external thing which needs to be done, which is they need more money so that they can put the heating, lighting on and feed themselves. But ultimately, yeah, you choose. I mean, I remember when I first started meditating, I was really annoyed because I just didn't seem to gel with it, and I couldn't stop those pesky thoughts. And then someone took me to one side and said, it's not about stopping your thoughts. It's about being okay with them and being with them. And I do a showcase, which is turning into a keynote next year for the Professional Speaking Association, which is called How to Be a Happy Human. And the reason it's called that is because How to Be a Happy Human is a beautiful alliteration. And I love a beautiful alliteration. But actually, the key thing is I'm not helping people to be happy. I'm helping people to be content and accept and spend time in the moment. That's the thing. And if that moment is sadness, or it's frustration, or it's anger, it's being with it in the moment and going, how do I want to deal with this? Because we spend so much time pushing away emotions which are so negative. It's like, I feel really sad, I don't want this, and push. And then when we have happiness, we're like, this is really good, I must keep this. So we're constantly in a state of either worrying that the shitty emotions, I call them shitty, and that's a judgment on my part, but those emotions are going to stick around and never leave. But then we sit in a place where we can't imagine that actually our happiness would stay around for a while. So we hold on to it too tightly. And we want it to be there all the time. And actually that frustration, that worry and concern that happiness is going to leave us actually makes us unhappy. So it becomes, or actually we end up unhappy because of that. So it becomes this really interesting dichotomy. Happiness is happiness, sadness is sadness, anger is anger. It's what you do with that emotion. And in Buddhism, it's one of the phrases which comes out, which is the problem isn't your thinking, it's the thinking about your thinking. It's what it means to us.
You mean that wasn't originally Captain Jack Sparrow?
No, he was no, because the Buddha didn't drink rum. So, and I don't think he did boats. He did trees.
Well,
He did trees. He did trees, mountains, and caves, but not boats, as far as I'm aware. I mean, we never hear the stories about the Buddha and his windlass as he, went across the seas to find strange new lands and fought pirates. We never heard those ones.
No, maybe we should.
Maybe we should. That's it. In fact, that's it. What we should do is we should go on Wikipedia and rewrite the entire kind of Buddhist story and turn it into a seafaring mariner story.
Or maybe your next comedy sketch. The Pirate Buddha.
I do have something in my comedy about a Buddhist retreat, but that could be a different one, couldn't it? Like a Buddhist water park. Yeah, what would you? God, they say that's just my brain's just firing off. And what would a Buddhist water park look like?
Lots of yoga mats on the water.
It could be. Yeah, Buddhist retreats are fun. I enjoy Buddhist retreats. They're great fun. Not enough meat, though. That's the only problem for me.
Yeah. And I think what you're saying about the emotions when we try and hold on to the happiness, or think that the anger is going to stay around forever and whatever, we just need to remember that this too shall pass. You're having the best day of your life. This too shall pass. Worst day of your life. This too shall pass.
Yeah. I was going to London at the weekend to a show, and I left the house here in Bromsgrove probably 8:30. First train I got around 9:30. Second train 25 to 11. I should have been in London by 1:45. I arrived in London at quarter to 5. And the reason for that is that sadly there'd been a fatality on the line, and the train which we were on, there was already a body on the line, but the train we were on hit that body again. And the person who did who had the body, they were dead, they were gone. But it meant that it upset the whole rail system. And this is a mainline route between Birmingham and, well, mainline route essentially between Glasgow and London. So it was pretty disruptive. Now, an older version of me would have got quite frustrated by it. Now, as it happened, I had a combination of jelly beans, water, and a chocolate bar, so life wasn't too bad. And there was some people around me who I met on there, and they were really good fun. And I was really just being aware of my internal state, because I wanted to get to London for a good reason. I was looking forward to getting to London, but it was put into the context of everything which was going on. Got a seat, I got a book, I got snacks, I got music if I wanted it on my headphones, I got company of people I could talk to. I went and chat with the driver. It was the third time he'd had to deal with that, so he knew he was going to be off work for a little while, and it was going to hit him, and he was getting a lot of grief off people. But I also know that actually the person who felt that they needed to do that must have been having a really tough time, and there's going to leave an impact on their family and their friends and partners, people who would have been now kicking themselves over the fact that maybe they didn't see the signs they should have looked at. And when you start to work all these things through, that yes, it had a huge impact on other people's days, had a huge impact on my day, but I could choose how I wanted to respond to that. You know, I could get really frustrated and ragey, and you know, every station person who came past, I'd be like, "Why the fuck haven't we got a train to get to London?" And actually, that wasn't a game that I wanted to play, and I could see people getting quite frustrated. And this isn't a story about, oh, you know, holier than thou, because yeah, it was frustrating for me, but you could see people getting really agitated by it, and they would just ended up carrying that agitation with them. And as it happened, I didn't carry any particular agitation. I didn't get to go for an ice cream at Covent Garden in the afternoon, and didn't get to go for a nice hot chocolate I was promised, and all these things, but still got to do all this other stuff and got there when it was right to get there. Now, that's a huge thing around acceptance for me. It's only taken me 50 years to get there, but it's really very cool in terms of how you manage your energy and how you view the world, when you kind of go, what can I control and what can't I control? And actually you realize that all you can control is this, and everything else you can't. And when you realize that, there's a moment of depression as well, because you're going, shit, is that all I can control? But it's also quite freeing going, that's all I can control. It's a fun game to play.
Yeah, most of the things we can control really are how we respond to external stimulus, whether it's be respond or react. We can choose what we put into our mouth or not, for the most part. Choose what goes in through our ears as much as possible, and choose how we view the external world.
Yeah, and that is all part of that process. The mental diet, the physical diet, the emotional diet, the spiritual diet, all of those things is really important. And I think there's a path which people go on. People step off at different points. There's the part of the path where you don't realize you got a problem and you just go, no, everything's fine, and you never change anything because you can't see past that. And then that catalyst moment comes along where you go, bugger, I've got to change something. And then you go off on that journey to change something. You change what you bring into your world, emotionally, spiritually, academically, nutrition, all of those things. And you cut out all the things which don't work for you. And that's really good. I think there's a stop-off point there where people go, and now I'm just going to sit. Or not now I'm just going to sit, but they choose to be in that place in a very, very happy spot, but they don't get to see anything which goes on outside of them. They don't get any alternative views. They don't get anything which might come along and just make them go, maybe if I see the world from that direction, it will change things. But those people who do then go on that journey and say, I've cut down all the stuff which I'm bringing into me emotionally, so I'm not reacting to that, I'm responding to it, who then go back out in the world and say, with a load of compassion, a load of time, and a load of questioning and curiosity, I'm going to go and talk to people who actually believe something different to me, because there may all be something in what they say which makes me think, I didn't see it that way before. And so there's all these steps along that line of recognition of what you can control and what you can't control, reducing what comes in, but also opening up the door a little bit and going, actually, can we talk about that? Can we have a conversation around that? Because there might well be something in there which is useful, or exploring it and going, yeah, actually, there's not much that I'm going to play within there, or I'm not quite ready to look at that yet because I'm still feeling a response to it, a reaction to it. And that, for me, feels like it's a lifetime's work. But we all want it now because you can order, you can order 50 little ducks off Amazon and have them delivered next day. So why wouldn't you want your emotions and emotional regulation to be kind of now? I want it now. But it's a lifetime's work.
It is. Yeah,
God, it's very deep for me. Very deep for me today. This is. I'm very sort of so.
It's almost like our whole society is a bit like a microwave, because messages, letters, all in an instant. New relationship, swipe right, instant. But at the same time, most of these, you can even get your food in an instant as well. But all the things that are very high value or feel like they're worth a lot, take time, effort, and investment.
Yeah. There's a great story which I tell clients probably anyone who hangs around me long enough and we get into the conversation enough. And it's a story about Joseph Heller, who wrote the book Catch-22. Got invited to an event by a party which was run by another author, a very successful author, who got a huge house, and the assistant welcomed Joseph Heller in at the door, and as they wandered through towards the party, the assistant very, very lovingly told Joseph Heller about all the things that this author had, and a helicopter and a Ferrari and a house in Spain and all this kind of stuff, and then said, "Oh, did you know that my boss, their book sold more in a day than your book Catch-22 sold in its entire lifetime?" Joseph Heller stops for a moment and kind of just looks at them and goes, nods a little bit, with a stroke of the chin, that kind of thing, and said, "Yeah, but I have something your boss doesn't." And the assistant's like, "Oh, what's that?" And Joseph Heller just says, "Enough." And it's a big, for me, it was a really powerful story of, one of the things I talk to clients about is the difference between safety and safeness. Your safety is that protection thing. It's, I'm earning money to buy things which I really like because I want to impress someone who doesn't really care about me and look in a particular way and change how you feel about me. But then I spend money having to protect it from people taking it away from me. Whereas safeness is, I know who I am. I know how I approach the world. I know what's important to me, and I'm confident in all of that. So wherever I go, I will always have that element of me there, and I'll have safeness. And it's knowing that, I've got a nice car. I like a nice car, but at the end of the day, is it really that important? Well, not really. Does it matter that my 2 dining room chairs downstairs in my front room are the same make as my table, but they're a different color? Well, no, because if I'd have waited around to get them exactly the same color as my table, then I wouldn't have any chairs. I needed somewhere to sit. That was the important thing. But it's a restructuring. It's a translation. It's almost like a reimagining of everything you think, and it starts in this.
Yeah, it reminds me of Jim Carrey when he stepped away from movies for a bit.
Yeah.
He was interviewed, and someone says, "Well, why are you stepping away?" He says, "Well, this is probably the only time you will ever hear a movie star say this. And it's because I can look at myself in the mirror and say, I've done enough, I have enough, and I am enough." And that was not long after his spiritual awakening, moving past the depression and all that kind of thing. And they said, "Well, will you ever come back?" He says, "Maybe. If a script really intrigues me and I feel called to do it, then I'm open to it. But at the moment, no. I'm just as happy painting and doing my other stuff."
I mean, it's a huge awakening to, we live in a world where the currency and the economics are based on currency. If you want to have your basic human needs met, you need to be in a position where you can have lighting and heating for the most part. I'm talking about it from the perspective of the Western world where we live. But then to have all of those things, I mean, how many people, you hear the stories about people who have all this fame and fortune and wonderful cars and wonderful houses and feel fucking lonely. And even down to what I read recently, Steve Martin's Born Standing Up book, which is immense to read. And you read his story about where he started and how he got into comedy and the grafting it in, how he twisted his comedy to different things and then went into film. And towards the back end of the book, he's talking about the time where he was doing like arena tours to sort of 24,000 people. And the process would be on stage, you get all this love and adulation, but then he'd be out through the stage door, into a car, off to the hotel, in the hotel, and it'd just be him. Because he was so famous, he couldn't spend time talking to anyone or being around anyone because he was scared that they would be after something else, there'd be another agenda. But also while his fame had got him so much, it had also left him in a place of total loneliness. And that, when connection and community, and it's one of the things I talk about, when connection community is so important, is, I can understand why people want fame because they believe it's about connection.
Yeah.
But I think it's actually about disconnection. I think you disconnect from yourself, and you actually do disconnect from people around you. But I know, well, I say I know, I'm sure that there are some people who can actually balance celebrity and fame with community connection, humanity, and they do a really good job of it. The irony is they're probably not that famous because they've got the balance right. But yeah, I think there's so much in this we can play with.
Yeah, definitely. So, if you could pick up a magic telephone and speak to yourself in the past, pre-therapy, what was one thing that version of Dave needed to hear from you today?
That's a really good question. It's the usual cheesy one of it's going to be okay.
Well, it's Cheesy Monday.
Cheesy Monday. I like Cheesy Monday. I think there's, for me, there would be a big part of acceptance. It would be, I mean, I still wake up in the morning sometimes and I can find 1,000,001 reasons why I'm not cool or successful. And why I look in the mirror and go, my God, you've got a big nose, which is probably designed for snorting drugs. So I've got all of these things I can tell myself already. But I know that self-deprecation was much harder when I was younger, and it was much more damaging. So that phone call would probably be more around acceptance, and it would be looking at developing the tools to actually recognize what is really good and invaluable, and showing the older version of me that there is an element of enough. And yes, you can strive to do those things because you choose to, but don't strive to do those things because you have to. It's acceptance of who you are and where you are, and that it's going to be okay. I mean, there's still a lot which could be improved in my life massively. But from where I am at the moment, it all feels pretty good. So yeah, instead of thinking it as a finite destination, to be honest, the only finite destination really is the end of your life. That is the bit which is coming regardless. When it comes, we don't know. How it comes, probably, don't really have an idea either, but there'll be some clues. But understand that you're on that journey right the way through. So enjoy it. And I'll probably slip them a piece of, a little message afterwards with the 4 values on and go, these are your values. Go and live your life by these. And lottery numbers. That would be the other thing. Lottery numbers and race winners from things like the Gold Cup over a few years. And yeah.
So you mentioned acceptance. Is there a difference for you between acceptance and settling?
Yeah, one begins with an A, one begins with an S. So settling is, I think about settling in the context of meditation. So there's a meditation called a settling, grounding, resting, and support. And you either focus on breath or you focus on sound. And there's other things you can focus on, but breath and sound are the 2 main ones. And settling is about almost that arriving in this moment. It's like the ritual you do in meditation. It's the sitting alert and dignified, but also comfortable and relaxed. It's the process you go through to recognize the breath. It's with the out breath, you relax more, you become more settled, you arrive in this space. I would almost say that if I had to say either the same, I'd say no. Oh, hello. I'd probably say that it's more to do with settling is the precursor to acceptance. You have to get yourself to that place where you can settle long enough to see the areas where maybe you're not accepting yourself, and see the areas where you're still pushing and struggling, and actually you're settled into a really good place where you're prepared to actually start working through that. That's how I would look at it. Although if you ask me the same question tomorrow, I'd probably make something else up.
And why not?
Because I'm that answer for me, that feels right. It feels like it makes sense. That settling is, I'm here, I'm arrived. It's like settling. I settle myself so that I can do a call, or I settle myself so I can go to sleep, and then that's when the work begins.
Excellent. If anyone is listening to this and thinking, that Dave, he's really cool dude. either want him to tell me a joke, or I want to speak to him about coaching and all sorts of crazy things, or I want to show him my feet. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Well, don't show me your feet because I'm not insured to do that anymore. So any advice I give you would be incorrect. I can recommend you to other people. If you want to come and find me, there's a few places to find me. They've got website www.davethecoach.co.uk. That currently has a little place marker up on it saying I'm still baking some website content because I was meant to set it up a bit more and haven't done anything with it. But you can contact me through there. Email hello@davethecoach.co.uk. In terms of social media, the place I play the most is LinkedIn. That's where I post every day. So I am Dave James. I think I am Dave James might well be my thing, but Dave James. Come and find me. Weird looking photo on there. And I post every day. And then probably I've got some various things I do for coaching online, but the one, if you want to follow me on Instagram, it would be my Dave Stands Up profile, which is my stand-up comedy one. So it's Dave and then stands with an S and then up, because if you do Dave stand up, you get a guy from America who's not as funny as me, and he doesn't need any more followers. So those are probably the areas I play in. But yeah, come and have a chat with me if you want to have a chat.
Love it. So, final question for today, or the final one that's going to be recorded anyway. And it's the same question I ask everybody, and don't prime them for it, because I want to get the most authentic answers as I can.
Ooh.
And the question is this: as this podcast is called Relationship Revolutions, if there were one thing that could bring a revolution to the world of dating and relationships, in your opinion, Mr. Dave, what would that one thing be?
Communication. Total communication with two sides to it. One, obviously communication, two sides in a relationship. It could be more, but coming to it from the place of I am ready to communicate openly and without judgment of myself, but also I am ready to receive communication from somebody else without judgment, and the other person doing the same thing. Communication 100%.
Beautiful. Love it. And that is something that is very much lacking in the world, not just in relationships, but in business, politics, everything.
Yeah. And I can tell you that in terms of my relationships, it's only recently that I've been in a relationship where the communication is so good that I'm like, where? And it made me realize how poorly I communicated in the past. But it's not just about me communicating; it's me being in a space where I can communicate and be seen and heard as well, and do the same for my partner. So that's huge.
How did you meet her?
Oh, well, that's for another day. But I'll tell you, it was not on an app. Real life, mate.
Sometimes that's the best way.
I would say, to be honest, it's probably the only way. So yeah, it's the only way which works. It's the only way which works for me, because it's like the speaking I do. It's all about energy. It's all about, I don't get clients necessarily who work. I've got some clients who've never met me because they're in other countries. Oh, I've frozen again. Look at that. And I was only rubbing my arm, and it said I was giving it a thumbs up. But the energetic exchange which you get in real life, I think, is very hard to do virtually. It can be done, yeah, but I think you cannot beat the energy you get from being in a space with someone.
Yeah, interestingly, I met my partner online. Now, well, previously I'd deleted myself from just about every other app there was, and thought I'd kind of worded my profile in a way it could be business, could be personal kind of thing. And then I thought, why am I doing that? Why have I got that there? I don't get any clients from it. I'll just go on there and delete it. I went on there with the intention of deleting it, and there's this message from this lady. So I thought, well, I'll give it a read. And it says, I like something about your profile, especially where you say this. Okay. And then noticed she was only 8 miles away, and thought, okay, maybe. Then I looked at her profile and says, I will never make the first move. I thought, got you. So we chatted for 2 or 3 days, met up for a quiet drink, and the rest is history.
It can be done, and there's so much in that around. it was the last stitch. It was, I am about ready to remove all this. I've given up on all of this shit. And then that's when that's the point, I suppose, where it becomes the acceptance and the freedom and the settling, however you want to put it, is right, I'm done with that. I'm now ready to energetically move on to something else. And then if you want to go down the route of the universe says, and now you're ready.
Yeah. Yeah. I had become the right version of me first.
Exactly. That was the perfect moment for it. And it couldn't have happened in any other way in any other time.
Thank you for listening. And if you haven't already, please leave me a review on your preferred podcast platform. Click the like button and also subscribe so that you get the new episode notifications. I'm curious, what did you take away from this episode? Please share your takeaways with me. Send me an email to relationship-revolutions@theloveengineer.rocks.